You're here to cause trouble. And if that's why you're here, you need to go away. Go. We don't want you here. Welcome back to another episode of the Blue Saints podcast, episode 3, and there is a lot to talk about. Namely, St. Paul Police Department's role in crowd control at a scene at 609 East Rose Avenue over on the east side of St. Paul with respect to some federal law enforcement action. And there's so much to cover here. I'm going to go in all kinds of different directions in terms of our response, what we did, what we didn't do. And I'm going to put it out there right now. I have not seen one bit of body camera footage. It's all locked down as there's an active investigation with respect to the force used. I will remind you, minimal force used by St. Paul police officers while they're trying to manage the large, rapidly growing, unruly crowd. And of course, not everybody in the crowd was unruly, but things did get a little bit dangerous out there. So I'm going to talk about all kinds of different pieces with respect to that episode, our response, how we generally do our business. And it is certainly a hot topic right now, especially considering at last night's St. Paul City Council meeting, they did vote on a resolution to call for an independent investigation by the Post Board. So we'll dive in. But first and foremost, let's talk about a couple pieces of this that I think are important. The first piece of it is, in response, the St. Paul Police Federation put out a statement the next day. I didn't put out it immediately because I wanted to learn a little bit about what had happened. So I'd like to talk a little bit about the statement we put out and why. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to read that statement. So for those of you that haven't heard it or seen it, we got a tremendous response on social media with respect to that statement. And so I just kind of want to highlight that. Give me a minute here. I'm going to pull it up. St. Paul Police Federation. This is the statement regarding the recent immigration and customs enforcement activity in St. Paul. And so this is what we put out on November 26th, 2025, one day after this incident occurred. Yesterday morning, federal agents executing a warrant were assaulted, threatened, and blocked by a violent mob. They called us for help. We responded only to protect lives and restore order. Nothing more. We do not do immigration enforcement, never have, never will. A core of professional agitators refused every order, attacked officers with frozen bottles and rocks, damaged patrol cars, and shouted, "Don't let them leave." Our officers, while being assaulted, used the absolute minimum force necessary to end the threat and get everyone home safe. Not one rioter was seriously injured. Several officers were struck by projectiles, yet every one of them showed extraordinary discipline and courage. This is not about politics. This is about public safety. We are not your adversary. We are your police. When the next mob comes, please stand with us, not against us. Our community deserves nothing less. So with that post, there were all kinds of different opinions regarding some of that language, and some of it is nuanced, and some of it does need a little bit of a qualification because people take things way out of context. So I'm gonna break down some aspects of that statement, specifically related to how people responded to it on social media. And again, in terms of the social media response, and we looked at the numbers, about 80% of those that engaged with our statement, those were positive comments, positive views of our statement, positive views of the work that our police are doing. And I fully recognize there are some people, it doesn't matter what we do, it's never going to be right. So about 20% of the comments were negative, maybe some just, maybe some unjust. I don't know. We'll take a deep dive into it. But one thing that caught many people's attention with respect to the statement was the fact that we referred to some of these folks at this scene as professional agitators. People got really spun up about that. Like, how do you know they're professional? There's no such thing as a professional. They're not being paid. All these different responses to professional agitators. And here's the deal. This is pretty simple. Having worked at scenes and performed crowd control management, here's how I'm going to define a professional agitator, a protester. And I'm sure that many of my colleagues would agree with this. Many of us have been out there on the line, holding the line, when dealing with these situations. If you show up to a protest and you have a gas mask, you've got frozen water bottles, you've got milk to rinse yourself off if you're exposed to chemical irritant, you come with whistles that you're blowing constantly, you come with a blowhorn, you come with pre-made signs to provoke the crowd, and then while you're there, you're intentionally not only just provoking police officers, which is, by the way, obnoxious and indignant behavior, but then you pull other people in and out of the crowd and trying to get them all riled up. And everybody's heard of the term mob mentality. Well, it's a real thing, all right? You can look it up. It's a psychological phenomenon when people in groups, same frame of mind, they get in this kind of excited state of mind. They're all together. You lose kind of some of your anonymity. And guess what? People can more easily get you agitated and get you to do things you normally wouldn't do. And a lot of these people, by the way, they're not members of our community. I keep hearing about, our community. Yeah, some of our definitely members of our community. And those are the people we're working for. But a lot of these people, they showed up, carloads of these people, for the specific reason to torment our cops, to try and bait them into doing things, and just to stir up trouble. They wanted to come and stir up trouble. That's their goal, which is why they have gas masks and they have frozen water bottles and other projectiles that they're throwing at cops. And they get right in these police officers' faces that are just trying to keep them away from any trouble. And by trouble, I meaning trying to obstruct federal law enforcement officers from doing their jobs. Whether you like it or not, if what they're doing is legal, you can't interfere with them. And as St. Paul police officers, we have an obligation to not only our residents in the city, but people that are working in this city. If what you're doing is legal, you're allowed to do it. It doesn't matter if we like it or if anybody else likes it. There's all kinds of laws and rules and regulations on the books that police officers may not agree with. It's of no consequence. Doesn't matter. We're still charged with enforcing the laws and ensuring that other people follow the rules and that people can go about their business safely. So whether you're a mail carrier, you own a hair salon, you're driving an Uber, you're delivering the newspaper, you're filling cavities at the dental office, you have the right to go about your business without people obstructing what you're trying to do if you're doing it legally. It's just the bottom line. It's a core tenet of just common decency and respect. I understand people do not agree with some of the things that are going on in terms of the federal government, immigration enforcement, all those things. But there's laws on the books. And by the way, if these federal agents aren't following the law, there's a mechanism to deal with that. We can't litigate this stuff out in the street. We can't do it. It's not possible. We can't sit there and litigate what's legal, what isn't legal, what's right, what isn't right, when we're getting in the weeds on some of these statutes and some of these things that are going on. And by the way, at 609 East Rose, this is a guy who had warrants, all right, felony level warrants, had committed felony level crimes in the United States, had already been deported once and returned. Okay, so this just wasn't some random shakeup. This is a credibly accused abuser. All right, that's what this is about. This is about people coming out and holding up for this guy who was here after he'd already been deported. He was not supposed to be in the United States, and had been credibly accused. And I'm not sure if he was arrested. I don't have all the details on his history, but I think he had a record for domestic abuse. So now we have people out there. They're not out there to be productive. They're out there to interfere with these federal law enforcement agents. And by the way, there was a calamity of errors that just kind of occurred as this whole thing unfolded. But point being, these folks have every right to do their jobs. These are good people. You might not agree with what they're doing at work, but on the flip side of it, what if it was a cause that you did believe in? What if it was your cause? And we can, whatever the cause is, whether it's some protest or some kind of a rally at the Capitol, or let's say if the roles were reversed and we were at the Planned Parenthood up on West University Avenue, and the pro-life folks were not allowing the doctors, nurses, social workers, counselors, custodians to go to work at Planned Parenthood, which is their right. Whether people agree with abortion or not, again, of no consequence to the St. Paul police officers. We have to ensure those people can get into that clinic and they can do what they're legally allowed to do. Now, on the flip side of this, if these pro-life protesters came out and formed a mob and started throwing things at the cops and being confrontational, and started assaulting our police officers, I would suspect the other side would say, oh, you guys took it easy on those folks. All you used were chemical munitions. You didn't use any other force. You didn't strike anybody. You didn't arrest anybody. You guys are playing favorites. But no, not over on 609 East Rose. Nope. We couldn't do anything right there. We had officers on the line for a couple of hours with people in their faces the entire time, yelling obscenities, saying horrible things to them, and just antagonizing them the entire time. And at what point do we not tolerate that anymore? All right? I don't know what it is. Is it a half hour? Is it an hour? Is it an hour and a half? Is it 2 hours? I don't know. But I can tell you that when our officers are out there and members of the general public are given lawful orders by the police, or any orders for that matter, you're obligated to comply with the orders. That just didn't happen over at 609 East Rose. And that's how this whole thing turned in to a situation where our police officers were forced to use very low levels of force. We're talking chemical munitions and maybe some less than lethal projectiles. I'm not even certain of what all was used to get the crowd to disperse and allow our police officers and everyone else to get out of there. Let's talk about a couple other pieces with respect to the statement. We are your police, and I'm talking to our community in St. Paul, all right? We are your police. We work with you. We work for you. And our main objective there, we don't get into immigration enforcement. We don't. But we were there to keep the crowd and the federal law enforcement agents separated so that nothing bad happened to either. Body cams were rolling. We were out there trying to hold the line so they could do their job, get them out of there, and move on. And the other thing is those folks, those federal agents, generally aren't equipped to deal with crowd management. Okay, they don't have the numbers. Many of them don't have the training, and they certainly don't have the intermediary tools that we have, meaning the chemical munitions, riot gear, all those types of things that you need in a crowd management type of a setting. They just don't have those resources. So if we're not there, then what we have is we have people there that are going to protest what these people are doing, potentially interfere with it. And then we have a real problem, because if it gets to the point where force is being used and projectiles start, again, frozen water bottles, rocks, those folks out there didn't have helmets on. I mean, those are potentially deadly force situations. That's what we want to avoid. We're not out there to say we agree with this, we disagree with it. Again, it is of no consequence, and it truly does not matter. It doesn't matter. We have to go out there to try and keep people safe, and that was our objective. And I will say there were plenty of very peaceful protesters out there. There were people that were just curious to see what was going on. But I will say some of those people actually did get spun up by what I'm going to call these professional agitators or professional protesters. And what we need and what we want from our community is to say, wait a minute, you don't live here. You're not from here. You're not invested in this neighborhood. You're not invested in the St. Paul Police Department and the well-being of our community. You're here to cause trouble. And if that's why you're here, you need to go away. Go. We don't want you here. You're doing nothing productive. All you're doing is trying to drive a wedge between the police department and the community. And it's just all provocation on behalf of these people. All they want is a response from the police department. So we end up in this position where we're at now. And so we do need to take it down a notch and really have this deep discussion about how these things happen and why they happen. There's some other things in terms of responses to our Facebook post that I thought were interesting. And then other storylines that came out as a result of social media and some of the videos that were taken by those in attendance. One thing I thought was interesting is there was this footage of a woman with a walking stick. All right. She was probably, I would suspect she's in her mid-20s, maybe early 30s. Don't know. But she had a walking stick, and she intentionally put herself in front of one of our police department Sprinter vans to prevent that van from leaving the scene. She was there. She put herself there intentionally as things were getting really dicey. And so some of the videos showed our officers make contact with that woman. The woman ends up on the ground. One thing leads to another. Eventually, they get her out from in front of the vehicle. Our officers are able to leave. They get out of there. But these stories, as they progress, this turned into an elderly woman with a cane was assaulted by the police. Not true. It's not true. That didn't happen. An elderly woman with a cane is one thing. A woman in her mid-20s with a walking stick is something totally different. By the way, the walking stick could have been used as a weapon, and I don't know, maybe she brought it there for that reason. I don't know, and neither do the police officers, which make it more dangerous. So those are the types of things we're dealing with, and we have to combat that. Another thing people are continually talking about is the separation ordinance in St. Paul, which does prevent us from engaging in immigration enforcement, and we do not engage in immigration enforcement. I'm just going to read a couple pieces of this. I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'm not going to bore you. It's in chapter 44 of the St. Paul Code of Ordinances. But I'm going to read a specific part of it so you get a handle. I'm going to read a specific part of it so you can get a handle on what really the separation ordinance is designed for and why we have it, and really to emphasize that we're in line with this, 100% in line with it. So I'm going to read it to you. Section 44.03, Public Safety Services. To the extent permitted by law in providing public safety services, employees of the police and fire departments and the city attorney's office criminal division, collectively public safety officials, shall be governed by the following requirements. Number one, public safety officials may not undertake any law enforcement action for the sole purpose of detecting the presence of undocumented persons or to verify immigration status, including but not limited to questioning any person or persons about their immigration status. Well, hey, check there on number one. None of that. We weren't engaged in any of that. Nope, we weren't. I'm going to go to section 3, which states public safety officials may not question, arrest, or detain any person for violations of federal civil immigration laws, except when immigration status is an element of the crime or when enforcing 8 U.S.C. 1324 Section C. Number 4, nothing in this chapter shall prohibit public safety personnel from assisting federal law enforcement officers in the investigation of criminal activity involving individuals present in the United States who may also be in violation of federal immigration laws. Well, read that one again. Nothing in this chapter shall prohibit public safety personnel from assisting federal law enforcement officers in the investigation of criminal activity involving individuals present in the United States who may also be in violation of federal immigration laws. Number 5, nothing in this chapter prohibits public safety personnel from adequately identifying criminal suspects or assessing the risk of flight of criminal suspects. This goes on, and the fact of the matter is, at no point in time did we violate the separation ordinance. Not what we were doing. We were there for crowd control. All right. We were there to deal with all the other people there, not the people the feds were dealing with. They had that handled. We just needed to ensure that there were no confrontations between the feds and the folks that showed up there, whether to observe peacefully or to wreak havoc. So the separation ordinance, I would suggest that those that feel like we're in violation of that somehow, some way, haven't read it. I would suggest you haven't read it. I would suggest you read it, and then you break down what we did and what we didn't do there. And you'd find that we did not violate the separation ordinance. I'm confident in that, 100% confident. And then it takes us to last night, St. Paul City Council meeting. There's a City Council resolution called for an independent investigation of this incident. And by independent, they want the Minnesota Post Board to do it. The Minnesota Peace Officers Standards and Training Board to do this investigation. Is that truly independent? I'm not so sure. The members of the Post Board, some are great. I know some of them personally wonderful people. They'll always do the right thing. I can't say I know all of them, but I will say some of them are really good people. But again, these people are selected / appointed by the governor. Is that truly independent? I think the governor has spoken many, many times about this issue of immigration and immigration enforcement by the federal government in Minnesota. And he certainly has strong feelings about it. And he's entitled to those, most definitely. But is it independent? Is it independent when we have an executive director at the Post Board who we know for certain released the names of undercover officers? Can we trust that person to make sure that this is done correctly? The executive director of the Post Board, Eric Misselt, who on several occasions released the identities of undercover cops, put those cops and their families in danger. Can we trust that? I don't know. I'm just asking these questions. I want people to think about that. What's truly independent? What isn't? Is it truly independent? Is it possible that the St. Paul police investigation is going to be sufficient? We do a great job investigating things. I will tell you that. And the body cam is all there. There's all kinds of open source media. Of course, when people play one small snippet of a video, well, what they're going to do is they're going to show you what they want you to see. They might not show you what happened the 10 seconds, 30 seconds, 1 minute prior, or anything after, but they'll show you the piece that they want you to see. And we all know why. Everybody knows how this works. And so do we. So that's where we're at. We're going to run our investigation. People may not like it. But the facts are going to come out. The facts are going to come out. And I want everybody to look at everything. And that's the thing. That's probably one of the most important aspects of any of this is you try and remain objective. And maybe you could say, hey, Mark, you're not objective. Because your job is to hold up for the cops. And you're right. My job is, and I will hold up for these cops because I know all of them personally. I know their characters. I know how they work. I've had the honor of working with all of them at some point. And I know how they operate. And I also know what it's like to be in a situation where you're outnumbered and people are violent and it's getting dangerous and you have to get out of there. And sometimes that requires force. Again, in our case, there were no strikes. All right, we didn't punch anybody. We didn't hit anybody with batons. Yes, chemical irritant was used to create space for officers, to get people away from them at a safe distance, to move people, to break up the crowd, all those things. Yep, our officers used some chemical munitions, I think. Again, I don't know everything that was used, why it was used, how it was used at any specific time. That will come out in the investigation. We'll have discussions about that. But I will tell you, our officers didn't mean anybody any ill will. They don't. When you're given a lawful order to move, you got to move. And again, if that lawful order turns out to not be lawful, there's a mechanism for that. Go to court. And it's settled in court. Because as I said before, we don't litigate things on the street. Can't do it. Can't do it now, can't ever do it. That's not the place for it. So we're going to see where all this goes. I'm as curious as anybody else. But I will say this. That was a tough situation for everybody. We don't want to be there. We don't. When we're doing those things, and again, it takes away from everything else we're doing in the city. When we have to call in all these resources or take them from somewhere else, then other situations aren't being handled. Other community members aren't being served. And it really takes away from our core mission. when we have to deploy resources for something like this. So we don't want to be there. We don't want to be a part of it. And that I am not speaking negatively about any federal law enforcement officers. Again, they're good people. They work hard. The mission is a good mission. Again, this is when this brings me to another point, which I said this isn't political. In our statement, we said this isn't political. It's not. It truly isn't. People make it political. People that absolutely cannot stand the President of the United States make all this political. Is some of it political? Maybe, maybe not. Again, it doesn't matter. Really doesn't matter what our political beliefs are. We check those at the door. Come to work, we do our jobs. We take an oath. Treat everybody fairly, decently, and do the best job we can. Sometimes we have to use force in the course of our duties. Force never looks good. The reality of using force in policing. And especially when you're dealing with large crowds. It's amazing how much damage can be done quickly if those crowds get out of hand. And mind you, our officers on this particular scene on this day were hit in the face with frozen water bottles. All right? I saw projectiles, again, and this is on open source media, being thrown through the air and hitting our officers. Saw a window broken out of a police car. Saw people up in police officers' face yelling and screaming at them. When you're 2 inches from my face, how do I know you're not going to punch me? You can't do that. You can't get in a police officer's face and do those things while they're actively trying to do a job, whether you agree with the job or not. Can't do that. You don't get to do that. We need civility. And people say, oh, you showed up with riot gear on. There wasn't riot gear. We did have people with some gas masks on because when things started to get dicey, it became very apparent, again, that the professional agitators, I get professionals, they have a gas mask, they got the tools, they're there to wreak havoc. When it was apparent that they weren't going to follow directions and they were trying to provoke people to do things they shouldn't do there, that we were probably going to be forced into a corner or into a position where we had no other option than to use force to get out of there. That's what happened. No disputing that. Our officers had to use force to get out of there. Nobody sustained any major injuries. Nobody. And again, the old sports adage, are you injured or are you hurt? If something hurts, it doesn't mean you're injured. Some people, their eyes probably watered a little bit, their noses ran, kind of difficult to breathe. Maybe some people got hit with projectiles from our cops. Again, I'm not 100% sure of that. I did hear about members of the media complaining about it. I'm just going to come out and say this. There is no way that I believe any of our officers would ever target members of the media. You have to know, as a member of the media, when you are in the middle of all that, it's chaotic. It's hard to deal with. Our cops aren't going to single you out. But you know you might be exposed to some chemical agents, some less than lethal munitions or non-lethal munitions, chemical irritants, all those things. You just have to know that might happen. If you're going to be in the mix, if you're going to be in an officer's face, photographing and taking video, that's a possibility. Our cops aren't going to target you. They're not targeting the media. Certainly, clearly identifiable folks in the media. If you're wearing a lanyard on your chest, with a little 2x2 plastic carrier and some cards in it, I mean, it's just impossible sometimes too for us to even determine who's media and who isn't. And in today's world, I mean, you rarely meet somebody out some of these things that don't have some kind of credentials. All kinds of people claim to be they're part of the media. But I know our cops did not target anybody from the media. So I'm just done. I'm not even going to dive into that because it's not worth talking about. I know it didn't happen. I don't need any other proof than to just watch how some of this unfolded. That's not the way that it works. What's also interesting is the response from city leadership. It was quick. We had folks out there. We had city officials out there, elected officials from both the city and the state that were involved in some of this. And I may get into some more specific details regarding some of the actions of those people once we get a little more information on what their involvement was. And again, the video, when a thorough examination of the video will give us an idea what some of those people are up to. But people have been, again, quite critical. And a lot of people from our community, specifically people that work in our community, they're invested in our community. I don't know that they're huge fans of the police department or police in general. I'm not certain. But there were some comments, there's some things put on social media, there's some statements released that are worth addressing in this podcast. And I'm just going to highlight a couple here. And in the next episode, I think we'll dive into probably some more of this, because we could talk hours and hours and hours about this protest, our response, our role, all of it. So I'm going to take a moment to read a Facebook post. All right, this is a good one. This Facebook post reads, "If anyone had an unacceptable encounter with SPPD today during a peaceful protest, please file a complaint. You should know that any officer that refused to identify themselves or failed to give you their business card violated policy." And then at the bottom, there's a link. stpaul.gov, file a police misconduct complaint. Complete this form if you need to submit a complaint regarding a St. Paul police officer. That was posted on November 25th at 3:10 p.m. by Erin Gebhardt Hayes. So she put this out there. This isn't some secret document. This was out right on Front Street for everybody to see. Now, why is this important? It's important because Erin Gebhardt Hayes was the former chair of the PCARC, also known as the Police Civilian Internal Affairs Review Commission. And now she's not the chair any longer, but she is still on the commission. And what that commission does is they review police complaints and they make recommendations as to whether the complaints should be sustained or not sustained or unfounded or you name it. And then they make recommendations for discipline. And the way our system works is the chief is not required to follow the recommendation. However, if he downwardly departs from the recommendation, he's required to offer a letter to the PCR to explain his reasoning for why he would downwardly depart from the recommendation. Now, as a union president, I see a lot of the recommendations, almost all of them. And sometimes they are way out of line and not commensurate with the offense that the officer, generally a policy violation that the officer committed. They can be way out of line. And it is. It really is all about policy. So what's interesting about this, you have somebody on that commission, they really should be, I think, neutral, objective arbiters for discipline, at least disciplinary recommendations. Again, only one person in the city gets to discipline police officers. That's the chief. He ultimately decides. When you have a job that significant, you're the decider. A lot of times I don't necessarily agree with the chief on his disciplinary decisions. Sometimes I agree with them wholeheartedly. Just depends on the circumstances. But at the end of the day, he's the guy that gets to make that determination. It's a tough job. It's not easy. And I think he actually does a pretty good job. I'm going to give credit to the chief. And it's a necessary aspect of our job because it's so important that we're always doing things with integrity and following the rules and transparent, that we have to hold ourselves accountable. If we don't hold ourselves accountable, then that's a huge failure on behalf of all of us. So we have to do that. And my job, again, is not to get everybody off the hook. Some people think that. That's not it. My job is to make sure that discipline is commensurate with whatever offense the officer committed or whatever policy they broke. And we want to be consistent. We want to be fair. And there's a lot of considerations that are made. And sometimes not everything's taken into consideration. So in our grievance process, sometimes we will bring things to light or frame things in a way where maybe the chief or internal affairs or somebody else says, oh, wait a minute, okay, we didn't think about that, or all right, we'll consider that. And that's just how the system works. It's a good system. It is. Our police department is fantastic. There's not corruption. There's not malfeasance. We do a great job. But so for Erin Hayes to put this out there is really troubling. And so first of all, for somebody in that position to actually solicit complaints, it's questionable, truly questionable. I think it's think it's beyond the pale, quite frankly. But this is what activists do. That's what they do. You know what? They rush to the keyboard and they virtue signal. And so I don't know if she should be on the PCR, because there's some clear bias in her messaging. The other piece of it is you would think that somebody that was the former chair and a current member of the commission would know what they're talking about. But what she fails to realize is that we were in a crowd control, semi-mobile field force or mobile field force configuration. We had to scrape a bunch of people together to come out. We all had mobile field force training. We're not all mobile field force members who get extra training and respond to these call-outs when they do come out. But every member of our department has some training, and we do some refreshers. But it's like anything else. If you're not doing it all the time, it's hard to remember every step. Or, again, it's not rocket science, but we have a dedicated mobile field force, and then we've all been trained in it. So if we need to do some crowd control, we have the tools and equipment to get out there, get a skirmish line going, and at least perform all the basic functions of crowd control. When we are in that configuration, per our policy, Aaron, we're not required to pull out business cards if somebody asks one. Say, here you go. Wait, time out, everybody. Stop throwing frozen water bottles in the rocks. All right, stop with the bullhorn yelling in my ear from just feet away, so I can dig into my uniform here with all this gear on, and I'm going to pull out a business card so that you can file a complaint on me. And by the way, our business cards do have a link to file complaints on them. But point being, for her to put this out there is ridiculous. Aaron, do better. We should be partners in all this stuff. This is not what partners do. Okay, first of all, you got it wrong. And secondly, it's clear. I don't think you're objective. And I know more than most of these people that are going to watch this and listen to this. And the reason I know is I listen to your meetings and I read your decisions and I look at some of the things that you do. And Aaron, you and I both know that you go out of your way to find obscure policy violations to try to administer discipline to cops. Oftentimes, that have nothing to do with that complaint that came in. It's ridiculous. It's not what we need. It's not your job. Do better. It's pathetic. Do better. This not the last letter, but it's going to be the last letter that I discuss in the podcast today, came from Leah Van Dasser. Anybody ever heard of Leah? Has anybody ever heard of Leah Van Dasser? Well, she is the president of the St. Paul Federation of Educators, Local 28, so the St. Paul Teachers Union. So my counterpart in the Teachers Union, Leah Van Dasser. Well, Leah, again, on the date that all this occurred, drafted a letter, a statement, puts the statement out. I'm going to read you that statement. And then we're going to dive into some of the details of the statement. And we're going to talk a little bit about Leah. And I'll be honest, it's important for people to stay in their lane. Generally, I try and stay in my lane. Again, nobody likes unsolicited advice. I don't necessarily always appreciate it. Sometimes it is productive, but generally speaking, people don't like unsolicited advice. But I have a little unsolicited advice for Miss Van Dasser with respect to her job, her performance, and her opinions on how our police do their jobs, and her opinions on how she thought our police performed on November 25th, 2025 at 609 East Rose. So next up, I'm going to read this letter, and then we're going to talk about it a little bit. Okay, here's the statement. Again, dated November 25th, 2025. That was signed, and I assume drafted, by Leah Van Dasser, the president, St. Paul Federation of Educators, Local 28. This morning, while Homeland Security Investigations was present in our community, the St. Paul Police Department arrived as observers were gathering to protect and care for the individuals under threat from Homeland Security Investigations. I was present this morning as were hundreds of other St. Paul residents. We were there because it was the right thing to do. All right. Well, Leah, so far so good. You didn't put a period after that last sentence, but I'm not going to do not getting into the grammar part of this. I have a sneaking suspicion if some of your members in the English department were to analyze this letter, they could probably give you a homework assignment. You got a little work to do, but I'm sure you're emotional when you wrote this, so I'm going to continue. Paragraph 2. The St. Paul Police Department did not come to protect the children in the home. They did not come to protect observers from illegal actions taken against them. They came to protect HSI. Okay. I think we have a difference of opinion there. In fact, I know we do. Paragraph 3. St. Paul has a separation ordinance that prohibits St. Paul employees and law enforcement from participating in federal enforcement acts. Yet SPPD arrived in the gas masks. They pepper sprayed observers as they took video. They shot non-lethal rounds into the crowd. These actions took place less than 1/2 mile away from 2 SPPS schools. Crowd control, which she put in quotations, on behalf of a federal operation that is designed to incite chaos and fear in our community is, in fact, assisting federal law enforcement. Whew, Leah, you got a couple things right in there, but a lot you didn't. Again, as an educator, offer a little more unsolicited advice. Told you I'm not a fan of doing this, but I got to do it. You should read the separation ordinance, Leah. Give it a read, and try and comprehend it. Give it a whirl. You're an educator. I have high expectations. I think you can do it. I want you to give it a shot. Okay, we're moving on. Paragraph 4. Today, SPPD showed that they are willing to be complicit with federal law enforcement as they abduct members of our community and separate families. They have made the choice to do the wrong thing. Shame on them. Shame on any elected official that chooses to split legal hairs and use muddled language to justify the harm that has been caused. Okay. Leah, we're going to talk a little bit about protecting families here, specifically with respect to you, but we are going to get into that here in just a moment. But I need to read the last 2-line paragraph. SPFE will continue to be present in these places. We will continue to care for and protect our students and our community because these are the right things to do. I don't have a real problem with that. You should continue to be present in places in the city. There's no doubt about that. And you should continue to care for and protect students in our community. We should all do that. And I think those are the right things to do. Now, there's a few areas of concern regarding your statement. A lot of the inaccuracies. This letter, again, I would probably, as I look at it, just if you're going to put something out like that, and this is a formal letter with your signature on it, get one of your members in there. I would recommend an English professor, English teacher. Have them proofread that work. Get after it. And I know I sound condescending. It's intentional. Kind of joke around, kind of not. I have a ton of friends that I've known for decades that are teachers in the St. Paul public school system. They are wonderful humans. I care deeply for them as a St. Paul guy myself and a product of the St. Paul public schools. That school district and the schools I went to used to be a huge source of pride for me. And I still have a lot of pride in those schools, certainly relative to the time that I was there. And I feel like I got a pretty good education, met a lot of impactful teachers that did a lot for me that are mentors and friends to this day. So to all of you, hey, I'm not coming after you. I'm not. I'm coming after your leader. This is a leadership issue. Your leader, your union leader, terrible. She's terrible. Your leader's an activist. Not to mention, she's got some baggage. She's got some serious baggage, and it relates to public safety and protecting kids. In fact, it relates to her own kids. Okay? Her own kids. Under her roof. Her husband was abusing children. All right? That's not good. She was married to this guy for 25 years. Apparently, I don't know if this is true or not, but she said she still supports him. Still support him, help him through this. That was back in 2019 when he was arrested for criminal sexual conduct. 11-year-old boy. Yeah, that's Leah's husband at the time. She'd been accused by her adult adopted children of being abusive herself. Now, again, she hasn't been, never arrested, never charged. But I will tell you, if you're married to somebody for 25 years and they're a child predator, they've got images on telephone that you're not aware of, I don't know that you're doing your job to protect kids. I'd say you failed in that regard. You failed, okay? And this is, I'm not making these things up. This is true. Again, to my colleagues, St. Paul Federation of Educators, Local 28, to the people I know, to all the hard work and dedicated teachers. It's not about you. It's not. Leah's got a ton of baggage. Just here's what I'll tell you to do. Google her name, look at her history, and then say to yourself, what if police officer have been accused of those things? Just the mere accusation. Mere accusations like this will ruin a police officer's career in many cases. But if you're living under the same roof with a chronic abuser, and then you go on to read the things that her adopted children have said about her role in it, the caution flags should go up. They should go up. And I'm not here to say she's guilty of any crimes. She may or may not be. None that certainly could be proven or charged. But I will say, Leah, if you're going to talk to police officers and write and pen letters about protecting children, you got to start in your own house, Leah. You got to start at home. That's where it all starts. And you've demonstrated you can't do that. So you can't do that. I am not confident they can do it anywhere else. So I think you should stay in your lane, Leah, and focus on getting things squared away at home and working on getting our kids in St. Paul educated because they need it. And I want those kids joining the police force. We want St. Paul kids aspiring to be St. Paul police officers, like me. I was a St. Paul kid. Dream job, becoming a St. Paul police officer. And the only reason I'm talking about Leah Van Dasser is because she wrote this letter, and she's talking about public safety, so that's our lane. It's our lane. I'm staying in my lane. Staying in my lane, just like I said I would. When I started this podcast, I committed to staying in our lane. And again, as a union, I've committed to we're not activists. We work in public safety. That's what we do. And there's politics involved in that. Sometimes this stuff isn't pretty, but this is what we're dealing with. This is what we're dealing with. And I will tell you that our cops are committed. They're hardworking, they're honest, with the highest moral fiber. Good cops, great cops. And I'm proud of their work. I am. Do I know every detail of this November 25th event? I'm not going to say that I do because I don't. But what I will say, I think when all the dust settles and these investigations are done, I think we're going to find that our officers did a good job, and they were put in an untenable situation, not by choice. Again, the ICE folks chose to be there. They have every right to do their jobs if they're doing them legally, which I have every reason to believe they were doing it legally. If they weren't, again, we can litigate that, just not on the street. The observers, folks that came to protest, and the folks that came to riot, they all chose to be there too, whatever the role was. Whatever the role is, they chose to be there. We, as a police department, we're forced to be there. It's an obligation. And actually, it's an obligation that we take seriously. We're going to come out and try and keep people safe. And as I said before, we just wanted to keep the crowd as it grew, especially as it got really big, a little more disruptive, away from those federal law enforcement officials so they could do their job and be done. And we didn't want those federal law enforcement officials engaging people in the crowd either. That was our goal. That was it. We just formed our line. Everybody followed the rules and been respectful and just watched. Could have taken notes. But again, that's not the story anymore, though. That's not the story. The story isn't what they did, what they didn't do. As it turns out, this guy, again, had warrants, was a wife beater. That doesn't matter, because now the story is, the police used force, how they used it. Should they have used the force they used, when they used it, where they used it, and people are going to analyze every little piece of it, and there's so much context that goes into that. It's just too difficult to surmise how it's all going to shake out. But from the open source videos I saw cops under some duress. I saw people trying to block them in. I saw people approaching officers in their vehicles, reaching in their vehicles, screaming at them. I don't know what you feel like, but when you're behind the wheel of your car, don't really have a lot of mobility, right? I mean, that's a really vulnerable spot to be. We all know that. Just think about if you just drop something under your seat trying to reach for it. You can't get to it unless you're a contortionist. It's not a good spot to be. You're vulnerable when you're behind the wheel of a car, especially when you're trying to account for other members of your team out there trying to get out of there, trying to do it safely, and people are trying to block you in, and it's tough. It's a tough spot to be. So I want to offer something up, though. This is important, and I'm gonna close with this on this episode, because I wanted to get into the fraud that's going on in the state, but we're gonna save that for the next episode. That is a hot topic right now, but we're gonna go back to November 25th, 2025, and this is my offer. I'm going to offer this up to the St. Paul City Council, mayor, mayor-elect, any department head in the city of St. Paul, and the St. Paul Federation of Educators, Leah, your board. I want you to help us with some practical training exercises, and I think this is what we should do. We want to get you all mobile field force gear. We want to put you out there on the line. We'll give you some good training. We'll train you up, tell you what to do, how to do it. Let's just, for the sake of argument, say there's 30 of you. Get a platoon or two of mobile field force assets. We're going to put you on a line. In the line, you are protecting something near and dear to your hearts. It's legal. It's important. You believe in it. All right? Which shouldn't matter, but I just want that to be your frame of mind. Because that doesn't matter for us cops, but I'm going to give you guys a freebie here. All right? I'm going to allow you to exhibit some bias. Explicit, not implicit. Some explicit bias in this exercise. Here's what you're going to do. We're going to put you on a line. Maybe a couple lines will form you up. And then we're going to bring in our role players, which I think I could find. I bet I could convince 300 the members who've been elected to serve me to help participate in this. And I say that number 300 because that's the number that's on hundreds and hundreds of protesters and demonstrators. So we'll just go with 300. So we're going to be at 10 times the number of you all that we're going to put out on the line and give you some training and teach you what to do. And then you know what we're going to do? We're not going to follow your orders. We're not doing it. Nope, we're not going to follow your orders. We're going to do what we do as protesters and rioters, violent criminals. Some of us will sit and watch, think, my goodness, what's going on? This is horrible. Some of us will get spun up and get caught into that mob mentality. Again, that's a real psychological effect. And we'll just see how the exercise goes. I really want to give you all the opportunity. I want to give all of you the opportunity to do this and be a part of it. And again, this is something, in this particular case, we're going to give you the freebie of exerting that explicit bias is something you really care about, and you're going to prevent this group. It's 300 people. Lord only knows how many are going to be violent. Lord only knows how many are going to have gas masks and large rocks and frozen water bottles and whistles and bullhorns. Lord only knows how many are going to get in your face and swear, saliva coming out of their mouths. Maybe or maybe not. intentionally, unintentionally spitting on you, calling you horrible names, being super disrespectful. And we're going to let that, we're going to do this. It's going to be a 3-hour exercise. We'll see. We'll work with your leadership, see if they'll pay you to do it. And let's do it. I just want you to understand what we're talking about here. And there's no better way than to do it. Again, your job is to prevent us from interfering with this cause that's near and dear to your heart. And whatever the cause is, it's legal, 100% legal. It's your job. So I'm going to offer that. I will do anything in my power as the president of the St. Paul Police Federation to make this happen. That's my pledge to you should you want to take me up on this offer. So I haven't talked to Chief about it. Chief, hey, I hope this doesn't make you mad. Or if it does, we can talk about it. But I do think it'd be a good practical exercise. It's almost like a citizens academy. We do that stuff all the time. Or you put people in the FATS simulator. That's a simulator where it's a computer screen. It's a shoot, no shoot scenarios. We have community members done those things all the time. So it's pretty similar to that, just be a little larger scale. So that's what I think we should do. Let's give it a run, give it a whirl, see how some of these folks feel about what it's like to be in that position. Might change their mind about how they feel about what happened on November 25th. It might not. They might gain some perspective. They might not. But I think it's worth a shot. So let's do it. In the meantime, be safe. Thank you for tuning in to the Blue Saints podcast, episode 3. I'm going to try and get another one out here in the very near future. It's been tough. We've been pretty busy. Holidays, a lot going on. But it is important that we get our message out there. And as a reminder to everybody, again, Blue Saints, we're the men and women in blue. We're working in the saintly city. We're doing God's work. That's what saints do. We're going to keep doing it. And we appreciate all the support because most people that listen to this are very supportive of us. And I really hope that some of the folks that aren't as supportive can just have a listen and they can dive into lambasting my opinions, or maybe not. But hopefully these folks out there will take us up on this offer, and we can set up a nice live training event to offer real, it's not really real, but kind of real perspective as to how these things go. So with that, everybody, hope you had a great Thanksgiving. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year. Happy holidays, whatever you may celebrate. Wish you all the best with your family, friends, loved ones. And we're going to see you next time. Thank you. Be well.